you have to remember all this weakening or strength is pointing to the conclusion, which means if we want to make the argument strengthened, which means that is we make the conclusion strengthened. In another way, in another words, is to say we make the conclusion more convincible. Same thing like the weakening. When we weaken the argument, actually what we want to weaken is the conclusion. What the things you want to tell me is not that convincible. So no matter is weakening or strengthening, it's always focused on the argument. So no matter how long the text is given to us, the first task you need to finish is always find out the conclusion. And also because the conclusion is what arguer want us to believe, so it's always very easier to find out because the arguer definitely cannot hiding the conclusion. You have to put the conclusion in a very obvious way, right? So we find out the conclusion first, step number one, and then followed by finding out the premises, which means why. Why you think that your conclusion is convincible? Why you want me to believe what you told me, right? What's that conclusion based on? That's called premise or premises. Sometimes we ask one, sometimes we ask more than one. We have to list all of them. So look at this question. In the bunch of the text, after we read all of this text, we'll find out in which sentences or which words that you think is arguer really want us to believe. After we read all of them, we will find out actually last sentences is the conclusion, which is this clearly shows that the glass flows. That is what the arguer want to convince us to believe, right? They want to convince us to believe actually glass is floating, it's flowing. That's what they want us to believe. But how? What's arguer based on? What's this conclusion based on? If we keep reading, we'll find out actually it's going to be the main premises here is to say the medieval glasses survive today is found out the sinker at the bottom. This is the premises, number one, right? Like the windows, which is in the medieval times. This is long time ago. When we look at that glasses, we'll find out actually their bottom will be thinner than their top, which means that is evidence. Actually, the arguer think can support to say the glass is flowing. That's basically what they told us. And some people, my student always ask him to say, Rex, what is another text here? You know, in some argument, it might have some argument. They give us some like the background information or give us some actual information to understand the whole argument. So which means in one set of the argument, it's not necessary to say everything is premises or the conclusion. It could be something else, the background information. So relatively is not that important for this type of information when we're dealing with the strength and the weakening section. So if we know this is the main premises and the conclusion, when we're talking about a weaken, so you still have to remember if you listen to me previously, W1, W2. There's two ways to weakening it. Either we can prove that actually the glasses in the old time is not necessary to say it's always changing their shape. We can use the W1, which we can just pointing out the premises and prove it's wrong. This is a more direct way to weakening the argument. But actually in the real test, or in our really daily debating, it's not that easy to find out because sometimes due to the limitation of the information we know, sometimes we are not that easy to find out, okay, your premise is wrong. Sometimes we are really hard to find out enough information to prove that, right? Even W1 is more efficient way, but to be honest, W2 is more common in our daily weakening situation. But look at A, B, C, D. And A, Glasses can be melted, and the melted glasses, like every liquid, flows contain the shapes of the vessels in which it's poured. So even A is true. Can A to weakening it? By weakening it, actually, we want to prove yes, the glasses is not flow. By weakening, what we want to prove, what we want to push the conclusion to is the glass is not flow, right? So think about it. If A is true, can they to prove that the glass is not flow? Does not flow? Can we just convince the audience to believe that the glass does not flow? Definitely not, right? So A cannot be weakening it. Sometimes A actually will say it's irrelevant. When we're talking about irrelevant, actually what we want to say is no matter A is true or not, it has no impact on the conclusion. Because you're only talking about the melt glasses. So when the glasses is melting, no matter it's flowing or not, it have no impact to say the glass flows. Because here the glasses definitely we're talking about is the glasses that when it's coming into this normal states, right? It's not melting, it's coming to the solid format. So even the melting, when the glass is melting, it's flowing, it does not mean that when it's got a solid is melting, it is flowing or not. So we might say it's irrelevant. Look at the B. The human eyes cannot detect tiny differences in the thickness of the glasses. So think about B. So if B is true, it can prove that the glass is not flowing. It seems not, right? So even we cannot see the glasses if it's flowing or not. Even we didn't see that, it does not mean it was not there, right? So B will more say is irrelevant. So look at the C. Modern buildings such as skyscrapers often construct. Okay, this is very easy to tell. It's irrelevant. So when we look at the D, glasses objects from ancient Egypt or Greece, which remain untouched for millionaires, are not thinkers at the bottom than at the top. So for this one, the correct answer is D. But let me ask you, for D, which way that option D is weakening the argument? By W1 or W2? Actually, we can easily find actually it's W1, right? So even I told you in previously to say the W1 is not a very practically can be used, but here is the example showing how to use the W1. W1 with the D just denying the truth of the premises. Because when the premise you tell me actually the glass is my thinker at the bottom than at top, but I give you another premise to say no, it's not true. Okay, from the ancient Egypt and the Greece, the glasses is not like that way. So I just straightforwardly denying the truth of your premises. And this way is going to be very efficient way to weaken. Sometimes we can say it's totally destroys the argument. Because if I can prove that your premise is wrong, no matter what's the conclusion you get from these premises, it's all wrong. So this is a very good example to showing us how can we use the W1 to weaken an argument.